Hello and welcome to this episode of What Will I Be When I Grow Up? Our guest today is Maha Subramaniam. She's the director of Creator Foundation Malaysia, where she leads the foundation's work across education, arts and culture, and community initiatives. She joined the foundation in 2021 when it was operating with a one-person team, her, and has since helped to build it into an organization of over 20 people. Maha also leads Schola, a free career guidance platform that helps Malaysian students discover careers and make more informed decisions about their future. So she's kind of like the perfect guest for this podcast, guys. Since launching in August 2024, Schola has reached more than 750,000 users, 10,000 teachers and school counselors with programs and partnerships across 12 states. Before joining Creator, Maha worked at Bank Negara Malaysia, on financial sector policy, fintech regulation, and Malaysia's response to the COVID-19 economic crisis. She studied finance and management at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania as a Bank Negara Malaysia Kijang Scholar. Welcome, Maha.
Yay! Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I guess the title of the podcast is literally our everyday, about how to help students be what they want to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when we met and had a chat about what you do, instinctively, I thought like I should have you on the podcast just because like the work is so aligned. And, you know, we really hope that the work that we do here at MABECS helps people think more broadly about career possibilities and not just being aligned to particular careers because that's what traditionally lots of Malaysians have done in the past. So I usually like to start the podcast by asking my guests to tell me a little bit about their childhood, some of the key influences that, you know, maybe some people, some places that impacted them growing up.
Yeah.
So over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I am a Klang girl. I grew up in Klang all my life.
I'm tempted to make a gangster joke, but I won't.
It's okay. I think people are like, wow, you drive like a gangster. And I used to have a hockey stick in my car. But
okay, well, guys, now we know.
But yeah, so I grew up in Klang. My dad was a rubber tapper for, you know, when I was young. And then he eventually went to TNB, worked as a technician all his life. And then my mom's a housewife. And I have two brothers, older siblings. I'm the youngest and only girl in the family. But essentially, like growing up, so I think in hindsight down here, I'm like, oh, were we lower income? I'm like, oh, I guess we were low income. But the good thing was, you know, never felt any of that. But my parents were very extra. So in the sense, they were like super singular in that education was everything for them. And I think this is a narrative that I've heard with quite a few people. But at the same time, for some weird reason, we had this picture of essentially Harvard. We all slept in this one bedroom. So we had a tiny picture in Harvard. I still have this memory put in there. So my parents were always like, okay, like that. So in growing up, so I don't know if it's a nurture thing or what. I was very singular. I'm like, whatever it is, I want to go to the US. That was my, as far as I can remember, ambition. And then my parents were super clear about, hey, like, if you want to do that, sure, but we definitely can't afford that. So whatever it takes, you have to get a scholarship. So my trajectory then was fulfilling this one thing, which was scholarship. And essentially, because people always ask me, I ended up doing econs, you know, science and econs, finance and management. People are like, oh, you like finance? You don't strike me as a, you know, science, econs, math, stats, girly. And I'm like, yeah, I was just 17. I'm like, I'll sign on any paper that lets me go abroad. And I was very clear I wanted to go to the US though, because I had researched, then I realized, oh, I could do multiple majors and I like arts. So I did finance and fine arts.
See, I love that because I think that's something that sometimes when you don't grow up with privilege and your options are limited, you don't always get to pursue your first love. And you have to kind of choose the thing that is put in front of you, right? So I really love the fact that when you were in the US, you did the thing that you were supposed to do, but you also had the opportunity to pursue something that you love. So tell us about the fine art bit. I'm not that fussed about economics.
The fine arts bit, so essentially, you know, I don't think I had a thought where, you know, I wanted to pursue it as a career per se or anything. Maybe I'm still quite type A. So at the back of my mind, I'm still like, oh, what would be a career in fine arts and whatnot? But I liked it as an interest. And I think for me, I really, really believe that like creativity is a very important virtue, strength, whatever. So, and my parents are, my mom especially, is very creative. So essentially when I took fine arts, it wasn't with a goal of a career. At that point of time, it was like, oh, I have to come back. And, I was a Bank Negara scholar, essentially. So I knew that I was going to come back and work with Bank Negara. But in a way, that certainty made me pursue a lot of random passions. So all of my summer was, so I did fine arts. I worked for a movie studio. I did mural art. So I interned with a couple of mural artists in New York and Philadelphia across the summer. So I think I really took it as I want to gain experiences to give me a completely different perspective about the world, because I'm interested in arts, but I'm super structured as a person. So I wanted that different way of thinking, how people process things and all.
Yeah, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think the way the education system sometimes is set up would suggest that the two are mutually exclusive. I've talked about this book on the podcast before, so I won't keep banging on about it, but there's a great book called Range.
Yes.
Have you read it? I love
Yeah.
it because it really talks about how there was some crazy stat, like every Nobel Prize winner who won the Nobel Prize for a science also was a rock star in some other artistic pursuit. So whether it was playing a musical instrument or painting or whatever. And I thought that was really, really cool, really interesting. We don't talk about that enough,
Yeah.
And I guess I was going to ask you a little bit about how, you landed on economics, but I like that we veered into this fine arts bit. Yeah. Okay. So obviously you said it was a goal to go to the US. It was, I guess your parents had put Harvard up as the place to go. It's so interesting because my parents didn't say anything. They had no plans for us, I suppose. They were like, okay, study hard.
Yeah.
And the US was never an option for us. It didn't even cross my mind or my sister's mind. I think it was always just, I guess, kena jajah. So we were going to the UK always. So anyway, tell us a little bit about the experience of studying at an Ivy League. Because I feel like there is a tremendous amount of pressure whilst you're there. You're amongst the best and the brightest. So what were some of your coping strategies whilst you were there?
Yeah.
Or was it just really easy for you?
It wasn't easy in terms of academically and all. Honestly, I think when I went there, I was like, whoa, it's completely different. I guess we talk about this in Malaysia. We tend to do memorizing as a way rather than, really thinking about the problem and how would you solve it. So that part was quite different. But I think, and something that I think about a lot, because people always ask, how are you are from such different worlds, and how it was fine being there to a certain extent. And I do account that I am very grateful for my parents that they always made me feel very confident as a person. Essentially, I know sometimes very harsh stance. Now in hindsight, because last time I used to be like, what? For example, my mom had a rule where after you've dressed up, when you left the house, you cannot sort of look at yourself in the mirror and check yourself out or whatever. So I would be 10, 11, you get glances of yourself in a car mirror. You're like, oh, and then
I'm so pretty.
Yeah, and my mom would be like, stop it, why are you so prasan or whatever? But I think for her, the principle was that you have to be very sure of yourself, no matter what. But
gosh, I love that, but I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, but it's so weird because now in hindsight, I think these little things. So I think when I went to the US, in those things, I do feel what I loved or the principle. So I was very much someone who's I will try everything no matter what. So, but what was very harsh about Penn or an Ivy was, I was that type A student in Malaysia, I can win this competition, win that, go join clubs and all. I guess in hindsight, I'm like, wow, so annoying. But
no, that's just, I recognize it.
Yeah. But then when I went to Penn, there is not a single club that you can join, just because you want to join. Everything is an application. Literally every singing group, every dancing group, volunteer club, every single one of them was you apply, the interview was this insane process and all. So that was, I guess, daunting. And then because people always say, oh, because you got in and all, that's why you're okay. I'm like, no. I definitely applied to at least 100 clubs. I'm not kidding. I literally think I did. And the first week I was there, I ran for student council president. And then
Wow.
and then I remember telling my mom, because everyone was like, who? One, people were like, Malaysia, what's that? They don't know. And then I was this like weird kid going around. But one of the candidates, a competitor, his name was Jesus. And I remember like being so upset. I'm like, Mom, because his tagline was Jesus takes the wheel. Jesus,
Oh,
and
God.
I was like, Mom, I also have a God's name, but they don't know that.
Yeah. Are you Mahalakshmi?
Yeah.
Oh, the best name. The best name.
So I guess these kinds of things, but essentially it is, I think I felt very sad whenever I didn't get in, right? That thinking of, it's okay, I get to be sad for a week. And then I'll try again and try again. And I really think that has been a principle that
That's
try.
a really good principle to
Apply.
have.
But I think I can do that because there was this underlying maybe sense of I am still me no matter what, which I'm very, very grateful for. I really am. Because now as I'm dealing with kids, we started with career exposure and all, but I'm realizing actually the big thing that allowed me to do what I could do was belief, this belief building.
Yeah. And it's kind of amazing how much of that does come from our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I always say that my parents always just made me, like, there was no question that I would be able to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know if I would have, like, made the effort to join 100 apply to join 100 clubs, man. That is like type A plus behavior.
Yeah. I was like, now in hindsight, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. We do things in our 20s. Yeah, and our youth. So obviously, having been a Bank Negara scholar, you had to come back and work for Bank Negara. And it looks like you were doing a pretty broad range of things, eh? Like not just one thing. Is that the general practice at Bank Negara for scholars? Like they want you to try different things?
So when I was there, no. Now, since I've left, it's been more than 5 years, they now have a management trainee program. So now, yes, they move you through like rotation every 6 months. But when I was there, no, it's just that coincidentally, the department that I was in, it was called Financial Development and Innovation. So it was a very broad department where any development work or any falls under that department. So it was quite broad because everything else that was very clear, like, oh, this is regulation, this is supervision, this is audit of a bank, had like very clear roles in other departments. And then because for the last 2 years that I was in Bank Negara, it was COVID. And the bank structure they just moved people around. So they had a central COVID task force unit and I went to that unit. And that's why it was a bit broad. Yeah.
And what was it like working for the central bank?
Obviously, it's a huge organization. People don't realize how big it is. It is 3,000 people big. It's huge.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize it was that big.
It's huge and it has about 40 departments. So the department that I was in was about 40 people big. So it's not very big compared to some other departments that like has 200 people. But the bank, it's very interesting because the experience that you get is super different depending on which department that you are in.
Okay.
Right. So mine was more development. So it's a bit more structured, but still you have loose, like it's a policy department and also there's a lot more open-endedness to what is being developed and all. I think now in hindsight, when I was there, I liked the work, but it made me realize a lot of things. So when I was in the US, I then started realizing, because I started doing a lot of teaching or social impact related work and clubs and all. That's when I realized, oh, there's this thing. And there were other people, my peers, who were considering a career in this, right? So then I'm like, oh, there's even such a thing. So that's when I started thinking about, oh, I actually like this space. And then, I was in the bank and was trying to, because obviously impact can be anywhere. It's not mutually exclusive purely for the NGO sector or whatever it is. So when I was in the bank, I was trying to think about, oh, does doing impact here is something I like. I am very grateful because it taught me a lot of fundamental skills such as, like all of the numbers related modeling, like PowerPoint, like really I did a lot of presentations, writing notes. Like I know now I guess also with AI and all.
Making decks. Isn't that what like people in consulting do?
Yeah. So
all day.
So it taught me a lot, but because I was in this department that was sort of inter everything, it really, I think the biggest thing was made me just talk to a lot of people across different streams, different sectors. And I think that was the biggest thing. But while being there, I sort of realized that, hey, like I wanted impact work and I'm in the development department. And this is sort of pretty good. Like the extent of development work in the bank would be this. And even within this, I still felt like I wanted a pivot because this is not necessarily me for essentially, policy work happens over a long horizon. So I thought I would like policy work, but policy happens over, if you're super lucky, 10 years, if not like more. It was very hard to, even after it's happened, to see like the impact.
Yeah, I guess that being able to see the outcomes of your work. It's interesting. A friend of mine sent me a video yesterday of the Fort Cornwallis project in Penang, and I know he's been part of it in some shape or form. And it started in 2013, and it's just done now, I think, based on the video. But it's wild, isn't it? That's like 13 years of someone's career.
Yeah.
And you may not be delighted by the outcome either. Yeah, no, I understand that. And I suppose you've already mentioned this, the fact that you wanted to pivot, you wanted to do something else. And I suppose the foundation happened at the right time for you, even though it was a foundation of one.
Yes.
Which I was just thinking when I sort of figured out that it was one person, I just thought that's a super brave move. I'm not sure I would have had the capacity to just be like, right, just me, let's go. So tell us a little bit about that decision to move, because it would have been big, right?
Yeah, for sure. So when I left, I was really, I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to go into. I just knew that this is not it. And honestly, this is probably now when I talk to students and all, I feel like there's a lot of benefit in knowing what you don't like. It's
100%.
very hard to answer what you like or what you want to be. Mm-hmm. So we usually don't ask students what you want to be, because that's like so daunting. I still don't know what I want to be.
Same.
So when I knew that I was looking for something different, but so I'm a scholar and hence I'm bonded with the Bank Negara for 10 years. At that point, it was slightly over 5 years. So typically, all scholars are like, if you want a break or pivot or want a time to look or think, the most traditional route is, okay, I'll apply for masters. So I was doing that essentially. I was applying for masters. It was COVID. And then during that period, extremely by chance, a co-worker of mine was like, hey, I saw this Corridor Foundation thing for something else. It was a financial literacy project. And they were like, I know you did some work on financial literacy and education in the US. Would you be interested to, do it? So I sort of did it. Then eventually that became a volunteer opportunity while I was still doing my master's application. I really hadn't considered this, but basically one thing led to another. The master's was coming through and all. So I called the board of the foundation to say, hey, like I likely will get it and go over a 6 months period and whatnot. I'm just giving a heads up to get people and all. And at that point of time, I just got a call that night to say, hey, like, if you make a decision now or like soon, we basically will offer to pay out the bond and all of these things. And you have this opportunity to come and start with thinking about. At that point of time, up until that point of time, the foundation had been a bit more of a traditional foundation, like grant giving. So they were also trying to think about how do we maybe build a slightly different model for the impact space in Malaysia. So in India, in US and all, it's a bit more mature where there's like tech for good. There is different models, right? So here then they were like, it's super prelim. If you're interested, we will definitely commit to it, have the backing, and then it's an open-ended thing. But by then, I was already working on a career education thing with them, but it was like a volunteer thing. So it was really that. And because of, I guess now in hindsight, maybe it was sort of desperation, maybe like I genuinely didn't know what I was getting into. I just thought like I wanted a change. And then this offer came and I have a very short period to decide. And I'm like, why not? Let's do it.
Sometimes those are the best decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
where you don't overthink it. You're just like, okay, I'm doing this now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't regret it at all, because even then, and the board, they were very nice to me in that they did give me, say, even in, after 2 years, if you want to go for masters, then we will have a conversation again, if that's still the right move for you, if that's what you want. I mean, it's been 5 years, so I'm still here, so and not there, not at that journey of my career yet. So yeah, it was a very interesting pivot. I really didn't know what I was getting into, but I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to be stagnant, and I wanted to just learn whatever else it is. But yeah. And then the foundation journey was a whole other journey lah, because I was like, okay, an NGO work, I knew what that was in my mind, but we also took a very different role. We are a product development sort of tech for good company.
Yeah, because I guess my next question really is, what was the hardest part of that transition from going, because you mentioned how you're like a person who likes structure. I also really like structure. Without structure, I think wild cards don't suit me. So how that transition from, like, obviously Bank Negara, big organization, very clear structure, one assumes, to, okay, here we go. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, so Bank Negara, obviously, if you have legal, there's someone who'll do that. Marketing, someone who will do that for you, right? And then I moved here, and basically you do everything. It's a startup. So every time now when we onboard teammates and all, we're like, hey, this is, an NGO, but we operate like a startup, essentially, where you are doing everything, right? I mean, I think
NGOs are the same.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair, like, I feel like most NGOs, unless you're talking like a big, ICRC or something.
Yeah. So that change was tough, but I think something that I've realized, I like structure, but oftentimes I think here, I only know the Malaysia space, so in my limited experience in that, is that people tend to equate structure with we can do this as a work or as an outcome. And for me, I realized, and this is an exercise that I was doing with my team recently. It's like a value sort exercise. So basically, you keep eliminating from 60 values.
Oh, we did that. Did that last year. It was really, was it last year? Sometimes I lose track of, I think it was last year. Was it last year, Kim? Yes.
Do you like the exercise? I found it very like it was a light bulb moment in my head.
I found it interesting. So guys, the person who's recording this is one of my colleagues who works in our marketing team. Did you like the exercise, Kim? Sorry, he's forced to say yes. No, I'm kidding. No, I think it was a mixed bag for our team, for sure. Like, I think for me, I was like, oh, I hadn't. And what was super interesting at the end was that the 5 values that were decided upon democratically were not the 5 values I would have chosen.
Oh,
I would have.
You did a team-wide, company-wide value.
So, I mean, we're not, we have 34 staff, right? So that's not a huge number of people. So we got everybody in the room. And so through a process of elimination, we got to these 5 values. And I was like, oh, I guess that's fine. No, but I mean, obviously the great values that we agreed upon. But yeah, it was a process.
Yeah. So basically what, like last year when we did it, so we did individual. So each of us, like our own values, right? So essentially my top value is optimism. Like I wouldn't actively think it and all, but then it made a lot of sense for me. So when this conversation about structure, so I realized that I like structure in the process, but I am a anything is possible kind of person. So typically I realize why I work very well in, I guess, this specific organization or with my founders and all is because for them is also the world is your oyster. For me, it's also like that. So I need huge openness in terms of what's possible, but very structured processes on what we're going to do to get there. Versus sometimes some organization where it's like very clear, like this is success. This is what we are going to do.
Sure. But I think that's very corporate, right? Like,
So,
and like corporates expect success to be like, it's within certain parameters. And how you get there is also within certain parameters. And I've always found that problematic. Like I've never worked in a extremely corporate environment, but I knew from a young age, like I would struggle with that.
Yeah.
I remember doing work placements as a law student and just kind of going, no, not for me. Don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was that transition where it was tough in terms of like, it's so new, like just the newness of it. Like, I didn't know so many of these different parts that makes an organization run, like payroll to, HR systems. There's so many of these things,
Yes.
right? So that was tough. But then the ability to, like, I think for me, it's like, I always remind myself, and I tell the team also, we get to do hard things, we get to do tough things, right? And that's a fun thing. And building a team was tough initially, but it's also been the most sort of fulfilling thing.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Getting the right group of people to
Yeah.
work together.
Yeah.
And mostly be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was the gap that you saw? Because I feel this gap still exists to a large degree.
Yeah.
A kind of disconnect between the way our education system works and then how we're expected to make these big life-changing decisions about what we pursue once we finish secondary school, right? And I used to think quite that you had to go to university, that was the pathway. But the more time I spend in this space, the more I realized like it shouldn't have to be that way for everybody.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what was the gap that you saw that you felt like made it necessary for Schola to exist?
Yeah. So initially we were very specific. We were just like, everybody in sort of students look really confused in making that immediate next step of what to do after SPM. Like we were very specific. Okay, there are 8 public pathways on what to do after SPM, and students are quite lost in terms of how to pick them. So we started with really that this was about 4 or 5 years ago. That was the premise. So let's do we put out content, guides, whatnot, matching with mentors to just help them with, is it an Asasi, is it metrics, is it STPM or what? But then we realized, so when we started with that, and then people were like, actually, I don't think that's the gap lah, because that's not the only gap. There is also funding gap, all of these different things. So then actually, that was the big thing. We kept being like, okay, fine, that's true, because that is also a gap. There's not just one gap. So we're like, okay, now we included things about looking for funding options. And then eventually people were like, but the gap is also, what if I don't like academic pathways? Like I like hands-on stuff. Then we're like, that's also a valid concern. So basically what eventually we started going towards were, we did a big survey with students, and then we realized to cluster the biggest problems or questions into like these 5 buckets. So it was like very open-ended. I don't know what to do at all after SPM. Second was I know what I want to become, but I don't know what education requirements. Third was this more hands-on roles, and then and then funding. So we actually, before this version of Schola, we focused on that and put out a version. But essentially when we put a very basic prototype of that out, and we realized that, I guess Malaysians, or generally Asians are nice. So you give them something, they'll be like, oh, nice, I will use it. But in trying to do everything, we were not really doing anything, right? So they were like, okay, what are you trying to do? Like every problem and all. So then we had to completely scrap and start again. And that's when we were like, actually, when you really look at the data, there is, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, is a given that after SPM, you will do some form of tertiary education.
Yes.
Right? Now it's not a given, and it's not by just
that's so interesting. So okay, yeah, tell me a bit more.
And honestly, so the gap, so we were like, we are trying to say like, how are you going to pick? But like people are not even considering that as the option. Like it's not, you must. So about I think 50% of students didn't feel like they would want to pursue tertiary education, or didn't feel that there is a need. If they went on to it or not, they still do. But I think in terms of just appetite and all, there was no clarity in terms of actually why lah. Like I feel like, there's more options for gig work. I have more options to earn income, and a lot of people do, drop shipping and all of these things. So then we were like, if we put out whatever we were putting out without showing them actually why are you doing this, right? So then when we were like, hey, why you don't want to go into tertiary education? So what we did was we did a survey with 1,000 students, and then we followed 50 students in a very detailed sort of like mapping of their journey after SPM and all. So from that, we realized the why people were like, whatever, I don't really care. Or it came out as that I think people care, was that they essentially didn't see why they should do tertiary education, because they were like, I don't want to be doctor, I don't want to be teacher, I don't want to be engineer. So never mind, I do something else, right? So then we were like, oh, actually, what someone believes is the world out there, or the world of work, or the world of careers, is super limited. And that had like cascading effects, because they will then, it maps to, I don't have to take this immediate action, because for them to earn income now, I can earn through other ways. And these other careers that I know of doesn't relate to me anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's ways of making money that didn't exist
Exactly.
even 10 years ago
Yeah.
or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it always shocks me, like how much money you can make from not doing anything, but I don't know, having your feet photographed. I'm just saying. No, it's actually, yeah, okay, wow. That's interesting because, obviously I have friends and family who have kids who are, maybe like 14, 15. And a surprising number of them will say things like, oh yeah, I just want to be a content creator. And I hadn't considered that as I don't know, their parents are yelling at them. They're like, what? No, you have to go to university. But I think that comes from privilege again, like, parents who have been to university, they see the value in it, they want their kids to do it. Wow, okay, that's fascinating. So can you give us an example of how like Scholars helped like a specific one student get through their journey? Like what was that like?
So essentially, now we're been live at Schola about 2 years. So we fundamentally agreed that because obviously the school to career transition is a huge problem. We had our North Star is early career exposure. So our aim is to expose students to as many different careers out there as possible. And hence we take a stance that there is no right or wrong career, but you need to know that there are all these options. And then despite that, you're like, this is still for me. Sure. If you want to be a content creator, completely, for us, we don't feel it's our position to say it's right or wrong, but you need to know that, hey, this will come with not very clear-cut career progression. There are nuances on like how people earn income and all of these things. So what has happened then over the years, we realized that but for us, it was a huge experiment, right? Because when we first went out, there were so many people who told us, like, I don't think people, like students, will care about career exposure. And quite honestly, we also didn't know. Like maybe it will not work. Maybe just exposing students to different careers is not necessarily helpful. But I think in hindsight now, we have these close to now more than 750,000 users, and we have about 8,000-ish qualitative like written feedback on the website. Some negative, some positive, and also the negative ones are typically, they're like, we have different ways of recommending careers to explore. Usually it's like you want to self-validate your interest, and if you feel like you got recommended something that doesn't, so it's usually like, it's not me, and that's fair. So we're trying to work on that. But the stories of people who have changed, we wanted to push exposure, but honestly, the unintended effects have been motivation, because we get a segment of students who actually have written to us to tell us, hey, because of seeing these pathways, I now feel motivated to sit for SPM or do well in this subject.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that one was quite like, we're like, oh, I guess that's unintended. So it's great. We have stories. So what happened after the first year, we had early users, and then we did a big blast to be like, hey, since you guys are early users, we want to be able to understand your journey. And then we onboarded them as Duta Schola. So there were about 300 applicants. We chose 60 people who are Schola ambassadors. So these people have their own stories. So some people who, enrolled in a business course, because typically when in Malaysia, if you're like not science, when you think of, banking and all, you assume that the course that you take is business or business admin and all. So then after that, some people were like, hey, I don't think now I'm realizing that this is not going to get me to the careers that I actually want. So I have one of the ambassador who then got like lucky that he was still able to pivot in matrix and then do now he's doing actuarial science. So there's these different stories of that, but I would say what I value most has been the motivation part. Like,
yeah, that's wonderful. If it like motivates them to want to do well in their studies, like that's
because I think they're like, oh, I could be this new thing that I didn't know. And honestly, for me, it's not even new careers, but for example, right, engineering, even sometimes I guess we discount that someone might know what a mechanical engineer is.
I don't always know.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But it's interesting because the other thing that a lot of people forget, not forget, they're not told that careers in banking and finance require significant numeracy skills, and that actually having a degree in engineering might open a door that a degree in business studies or business admin may not. Not casting shade on business studies or business admin. It's really about understanding what those differences are. It's interesting. So at MABECS, about a third of all our applications are for engineering. Very, very STEM focused. And it is my goal in life to get people to apply for less STEM-focused subjects.
It's so interesting because for us, we have the opposite issue.
Wow.
Because, with the Ministry of Education, so we have very little STEM participation rate and all. So on our website, even like how exploration happens and all, it's just fascinating. But STEM careers, so there's STEM. But now we are realizing actually when students think of STEM, it's S, science.
Science.
The exploration in TEM side of things is like almost like, so we're trying to get that up. The other thing is, so what we did with Schola initially, because I fundamentally believe, so now, yes, we're an NGO, but for us, we always say it's like a commercial discipline, quote unquote. Like we really think about, does it sell or not to a student? Because like, if not, we have to be competing with attention on like a really fun TikTok video and whatever, right?
Sure.
So when we first went out, we put out basically matching through a fun personality test, and then you get your like Buddha schema or Buddha
ours is a food test, so you can be like nasi lemak or roti canai or something. Yeah, because we also felt the same way. Like, and it's really funny,
want to do
right?
The food test.
No, you should. So going back to what you said earlier about like not feeling validated, right? So I, as a woman in my 40s, when we were doing this setting up the test for our website. Of course, I did the test. I was really disappointed when it came up as like business, entrepreneurial, whatever. I was like, what? No, I like books and creativity. And then I'm like, lady, what do you do for a living? Why are you surprised that this was the outcome? Because that is essentially what I do now. And it's so crazy that like that career trajectory went the way it did. Like zero regrets, but it was really funny to me because then luckily I had the capacity to stop and laugh. Because I get that. We're like, what? How dare you say that I'm a entrepreneurial business person? I'm a creative. Yeah, I know, so silly. But it's super interesting. But I think it's amazing to kind of hear the range of things that you guys started off with, and then having that capacity to stop and pull back, right? Because I think there's always the temptation. I felt that too when I started here, to do all things, to be all things to all people at all times, and then to realize that is not helpful. And to kind of then zone in on what you're good at and actually do that and do it well. So I think we're sort of coming towards the tail end of our conversation now. And I always ask guests like to look back at their journey and to think about, whether there's anything in your journey thus far that you've changed.
Oh, I honestly can't think of anything that I would change. I think maybe, okay, I would change. One thing is that I don't know if it's as Malaysians or how we grew up and whatnot, that when I was in university, I was, like I said, I was very confident. I'll talk to anyone, but didn't think of that it was okay to just approach an adult, a professor, and just be like, hi, like, what do you think of this? And I was very scared of doing that because an authority figure and all. I think that is the only thing where in hindsight, I would have put in more energy, not just energy, I would have wanted to know that, hey, it's super useful and completely okay to build these sort of mentorship ability to ask people things if you don't know, or if you just want a perspective much earlier on, because I really think that is a skill and a muscle that helps you a lot in your career throughout. But I just think it's a muscle that people need to build. Now when people are like, oh, like, hey, I want to reach out to this person, but I'm scared. And I'm like, hey, when has it ever been that when someone comes to you and it's like, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing and get your perspective, have you felt mad about it? Like, right? So I think maybe only that. I think in uni I was very active, but I wished I was slightly more, I would have hoped that I was more okay with going to professors, to other administrators to be like, hey, what's your perspective on something?
Did you have, so in the UK, they have a system where you get assigned a personal tutor. So someone that is an academic within the department that you're in, and they're there really for pastoral care.
Yeah.
Did you have that?
So we have had that. Like, we have an academic advisor. But I think, so I really didn't sort of make use or spend, because I think for me it was like, oh, if I have these conversations, I have to know exactly what I want, but I'm like, you don't need to. And they're open to having whatever conversations about careers early on. And I think I was a very curious person about so many things, but not about that. And I think people should be curious.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I remember struggling very much in my first term of university, and I didn't do very well in the first set of exams. And it came as a bit of a shock also because I'd been good student up until that point, right?
Failure,
and then type A, everything also A, And then I remember my personal tutor, I feel like he was such a important person in that journey, because he said to me, oh, I think, bearing in mind that I scraped through, and he said, oh, I think given a little bit more effort, you'd definitely be on course for a second class upper or first class. I looked at him, I was incredulous, right? Like I'm 18 and a half, 19 maybe at this point, just going, I just got 42, 43, and 41. You really think I'm going to be able to pull my scores up? Because I feel like I really don't know what I'm doing. And he said, yeah. He didn't say much else. He just said, yeah, I think you can do this, And I thought, oh, okay. All right. If he thinks I can do this, then I guess I can do this.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not wrong. But at the same time, that it's really interesting, right? Like the authority figure.
Yeah.
That we're so used to authority figures, like growing up in school and whatever. And for me, the fact that the authority figure told me, you got this.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess I do. Okay. But yeah, it's interesting. So I do think that's really valuable advice to young people. Like, don't be, especially our Malaysian kids who are going abroad, don't be shy. The professors are there to support you through your academic journey. And any final advice to our listeners who are thinking about what they would be when they grow up?
I think just be super curious. Even if you think you don't like a sector, you really don't know all the options there. Your friends, why are they interested in something? Ask them, oh, actually, how would that look like for you? I think the ability to ask questions and just remain interested, even if that's not your path, is really important. And that curiosity and just conversations, man. I know it's such a simple thing, but I feel like conversations or being open to just take that call or just meet this random person. This entire job was because my co-worker was like, hey, there's this foundation thing, pretty random. You want to just try out? I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, I'm thinking about how we met. That was quite random as well.
That was you were like, yeah, thank you.
No, I just mainly liked your outfit. So I was like, I'm going to talk to this lady.
I thought of that today. I was like, oh, should I wear this outfit again?
No, I was like, that lady's outfit is cool. I'm going to stop her and talk to her. We were both waiting for a Grab, guys. We'd been at the same event.
Yes.
That's the backstory. Great. So thank you so much for making the time today. And I really feel like more and more people should use Schola. I think it's really valuable, and we would like to use it with our students as well. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yes, Schola is free. So yes, would love to get everyone to use it.
Thank you.